Hi everybody. About 20 years ago, I was in this room, the Universal Hall. Hey everybody. It was about 20 years ago that I was sat in this room with about 80 other men here in the Universal Hall in the Eco Village, Findhorn, to attend a program, I think it was 5 days long, called Men in the Quest. And it was being run by a few guys from an organization called A Band of Brothers. And they had been in cahoots with a guy called Dr. Robert Moore, who's a Jungian analyst. And he wrote a book, very famous in the men's work movement around the world. That book was called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And at that time in my life, I was early 30s, and I was starting to wonder, what does it mean to be a man? What does it actually mean? And not what does it mean in the world, what does it mean for me? And where might I find out? So that's how I came to be here. It was an interesting week. I'd been through a massive transition in my life already, having left my corporate life, career in IT and engineering several years before, having studied applied psychology for 4 or 5 years that had precipitated the change in my career, my life, my relationship, seen me travel around the world, take a couple of years out. Very privileged to have done that and had that experience. And the many encounters that I was privileged to have. And so I was back in the UK and thinking, right, okay, so life, and now what? And I didn't really know. I'd been raised in a fundamentalist religious household. Fundamentalism is always a kind of violence, right? Of all kinds. And so I'd shared a lot of that early conditioning and programming, but I didn't yet know what the next steps were. So that's how I come to be here. And I met some interesting people, the guys from A Band of Brothers, Robert Moore. I'd studied with some of Robert Moore's students, people who'd studied with him much earlier in their careers. I'd then gone on to study with in San Diego, psychologists, clinical psychologists, psychotherapists, and I was moving in that direction myself, but I wanted more grounding, more orientation from within my own kind of center of gravity, if you like. So yeah, so that's why I was here. And it was a journey. That journey saw me become involved with the Mankind Project in the UK, with A Band of Brothers in the UK, and that led to me being pursued, I might say, to work to bring an organization that had started in the States called Boys to Men to the UK. And I did that. I founded an organization. We changed the name from Boys to Men to Journeyman UK. And I built that charity, gathered community, etc., all the things you need to do to register a business and then register it as a charity, the admin side of it, but also what does it mean to bring rites of passage to the UK for teenage boys? So I did that. And learned a lot. And I learned most when that initiative kind of morally collapsed and regressed and acted out all of the things. Of course it did. It acted out all of the things that we were looking to address, looking to lean into, looking to find a way to hold and navigate this idea of a pathologically adolescent masculinity running the show, rather than initiating generative masculinity, which is the phrase that I now use to describe my work in this particular arena. And so what am I doing, hanging on to this selfie stick, talking to you, walking around this hall, back in Findhorn 20 years later? Well, I continued my travels after the journeyman episode, as I call it. And I continued my studies and I continued my work and went back into coaching and psychotherapy and facilitation, and I kind of came to this understanding that men's work was part of my own personal journey, and I needed to keep doing it for myself to recover from the journeyman episode, and also to make sense of that in a meaningful way, not to just kind of let that experience go by the way, go to waste. And from that, the Helios Fellowship was born. And so it's the Helios Fellowship that brings me here, walking around in circles, a spiral perhaps, on a Tuesday morning in June, just ahead of summer solstice. And a specific event for the Helios Fellowship that will take place here in this room and other places on this landscape in October this year. Now, at the moment, the schedule officially starts on the 26th of October, which is a Monday morning, and it completes on the 31st in the evening, 11 p.m. on Halloween. But it's probably going to start more informally on the Sunday afternoon, when my hope is that my good friend Jamie will be here, along with TJ and Adam. And in this room there'll be a whole bunch of drums, and there'll be an open community session for people to come in and out and join a drumming circle. Meanwhile, out there somewhere in the foyer, men will be arriving to register. That will all kind of wrap up around about 6 p.m. and then at 7 p.m. in this hall, we're going to show a film. Again, open to the community, to anyone that wants to come. But that film is going to be The Green Knight. That's the best film, the best media, the best kind of storytelling that I've seen in the last 20 years since I've been involved in men's work, that gives us a mythological take on the developmental arc that the masculine psyche undergoes when it is not initiated, when it does not experience an intentional, deep initiation into life, not into the individual, not into an organization, not into a specific role or function, but into life itself. And that, of course, is the most common way that the masculine psyche is initiated. Is kind of a bit of a shit show, to be honest. It's kind of fly by the seat of your pants, fake it till you make it, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps kind of affair. And it's not very coherent. And of course, everyone has such radically different experiences of it because they're starting from different places without a really clear understanding of where it is they might be headed. And specifically, without the tools to even figure that out. Instead of meaningful tools, skills, depth, understanding, and insight, not mere principles, but actual practices that can be embodied and integrated into one's own life, People kind of making it up as they go along. And what tends to happen in that case is that we have an experience and then we tell ourselves a story to make sense of the experience. Well, that's all well and good for a while, but soon we realize that those stories that we're telling ourselves are performative, that we're still not really very grounded in our own center, our own sense of self. That there's no generative flow and connection from within ourselves to the world beyond us. Excuse me. Sorry, there's a sign on the door. If you could leave now, please. Boundaries would be one of the things that people miss. And so without that sense of an individuated, not a separate, but a unique sense of self, able to contribute and participate in life beyond the self, beyond one's own value system, one's own biography, that contributes to a world that itself is generative. We're kind of always in that fake it to make it kind of space. And so the event that will be happening here in October, that will probably start on the Sunday afternoon with an open invite to the community and the film in the evening where there'll be a Q&A, is called Fire in the King's Cup. Fire in the King's Cup is the central offering of the Helios Fellowship. We're going to borrow from mythology, obviously. We're called the Helios Fellowship, whoever we are. The program is called Fire in the King's Cup. There's a Grail reference there. There's an alchemical reference there. There's some deep mythological themes invoked. If you look at the artwork for the Helios Fellowship and the words around that artwork, the Helios Fellowship initiating generative masculinity, connected by nature, there are also some powerful statements and visuals. But this week that I'm going to spend together with up to 150 men, that's the plan, that's the intention, that's what I'm organizing for, that's what I'm producing for. 150 men, 25 and above. The intention of the week is to be able to invoke these deep mythological themes, understandings, narratives, but to hold them very lightly. The king, warrior, magician, lover, those archetypal, symbolic energies, to hold them lightly and instead focus on skills. What does it mean for me? How do I organize my thinking? How do I access a sense of embodiment within myself? How do I ground myself in today's reality in a way where I can align with a sense of myself, with a sense of purpose, with a sense of direction, with a sense of agency, and more importantly, not that be just in my head as an idea and a white knuckle ride I've got to hang on to and survive my way through, but as an authentic, resourceful next step. I think that's what Joseph Campbell was talking about when he talked about the hero's journey, with someone who is aligned with themselves and through that alignment finds a deep sense of meaning and purpose and agency in the world. And the necessary skills, tools, resources, understandings to be able to keep moving forward, especially when it gets difficult. And so this week is, perhaps we could encapsulate it by saying it's about going from the mythic to the specific. taking ideas, thoughts, concepts, whether they are mythological, biographical, and initiating them through into an embodied, skillful way of inhabiting your life. That's what Fire in the King's Cup is for. The fire will be your fire, whatever state it's in at this place and space in your life. The cup is the container. In this space, this context that we're going to create, that container will be the shared responsibility of the men who show up. My role is to facilitate the creation of that container and offer skills and demonstrate those in practice, and then for people to go away and have a go, to figure it out, to take what works, ditch the rest, refine it, hone it, bring your own ideas to it. Find your way with it. From the mythic to the specific. Not fuzzy concepts, not wishful thinking, not magical thinking, but weaving a container that has integrity, that has authenticity, that has groundedness, that can contain difference, that can contain opposites, and find the complementary aspects in those differences, those opposites, so that something else might emerge. And so Fire in the King's Cup in October is itself an initiation. It will be an initiation, not merely, as I've heard some people say, well, you know, initiation just means to start something. Initiation means to awaken to life in the deepest possible way you can. And there are many layers to that. And it's probably important to say now, as a little digression from where I was going, to say this week isn't about being a big kind of rah-rah, grab it by the balls kind of thing. If you want mere catharsis and you want to jump around and scream and shout, there are loads of places to go and do that. Go check out the MKP if that's what your deal is. If you want to learn nuance and skill and actual presence and depth, that's a very different approach. A very, very different approach. That requires embodiment as the first principle, not as some event down the line. We're not looking to get there eventually. We'll be beginning there. We'll be putting the groundwork in before we go anywhere else. We'll be looking at what it means to settle in and settle down with ourselves. How is that for ourselves? What's it then like to extend from that place to connect with somebody else? We're not here to just drown ourselves in emotions. Far from it. We're here to learn to attune to them and then make sense of them and then put them to work. Have them mean something. Because we are the meaning makers. There is no meaning that we don't make. We might spend our lives looking for some outside there, but it's in here that it comes from. And we're responsible for that. Can we help each other do that? Absolutely. And so that's what this container is about. Part of it. But beyond this event, Fire in the King's Cup, there are other initiatives, other aspects to the Helios Fellowship that are equally and perhaps more important than this. And that is to create a space in which to foster, to initiate and foster, to open the possibility for connecting with other men, so that when men leave this space, rather than it be one of those kind of sheet dip, everything's really super intense, and then I left and now I'm just more confused than I was when I came because someone's opened Pandora's box for me, but I've got no idea what to do with all the shit that just came out, or all the beauty, or all the joy, or all the emotion, or all the clarity. Now what do I do with it afterwards? men will go away and continue to speak with each other, not on some email chat list, as other places might suggest, qualifies for incorporation. It does not, by the way. But in what I call a three-man clan, there are a couple of guys that made it known to me very recently that they don't really like the phrase three-man clan, that it didn't really mean anything to them. And so they have other names for it, and that's totally cool for people to call it other things. Essentially, it will be three guys who select themselves with each other, for each other, who agree to a time scale of their own making to get online and have a chat. Once every 2 weeks is my suggestion, for at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, but not more than 2 hours. And to commit to that and be consistent in that, so that over time you get to practice what you learned here, what you took away from here. You get to keep a focus on your intentions for when you left here. Beyond the three-man clan, which is beyond fire in the King's Cup, there may come in time some little clusters of three-man clans that decide, well, wouldn't it be cool if we got together with another three-man clan? And wouldn't it be cool if we started hanging out maybe once a month? And then wouldn't it be cool if perhaps after we've been doing that for a year or two, because this takes time, you can't rush it. Wouldn't it be cool if we could then get to a place where amongst ourselves, the 9, the 12, the 15, maybe even just the 6, we might invite a couple of teenage boys to come and sit with us and tell their stories and tell us what's important to them, and offer these boys some listening, some witnessing, we might call it, some quality attention, essentially. So that these teenage boys know that they are seen, know that there are some men in the world who do not have it figured out, but who know that they do not have it figured out, but that they can figure it out when they put their mind to it. That when they bring their focus and their attention to a specific goal or outcome that is important to them and are consistent and keep showing up for it, they can make progress. Not flick a switch and have some magic aha moment that lasts for 10 seconds, but really start to build an authentic, generative life for themselves and the people around them and the community around them in small ways. One of the things I'm going to be sharing over the course of this week are the incredible stories of very subtle but very powerful moments that I experienced in the Journeyman community, specifically sitting around a fire with a bunch of teenage boys. Things that seem to happen spontaneously, like insights, radical clarifications for certain people. For the boys, these 11 to 17-year-olds they were, who because of having a space in which they could risk saying what they weren't sure was true for themselves at that point, and being mirrored and met in the briefest moment, they had permission to consider a radically different life for themselves, a radically different way of interpreting their experience, however difficult it might have been, however odd, strange, confusing it might have been, that allowed them to move forwards into something larger than those perhaps traumatic experiences. It's not rocket science. It's very simple, but it does require attention and a certain amount of skill and the capacity to attune to one's deeper register of intelligence, one's embodied sense of knowing, one's instinctual self, if you like, one's deep imagination. And perhaps when there are some teenage boys in the mix, there will also be enough men who have done enough work, have enough trust, connection, authentic, meaningful relationship. And I don't mean superficial relationship. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, fine, thanks. How are you? I mean, what's going on in your life? You said that this was important to you. How's it going? I want to know. Tell me. Been thinking of you. What are you doing about it? Well, come on, let's get it back on track. That kind of relationship that's reciprocal, where there's reciprocity. When there's enough men who've got enough of that, there will be what I call the deep nature emotion, something that I have facilitated for adults for 10 years now, including groups of men, where we will invite some of these boys, these adolescent young men, to go and sit out on the land for 4 days and 4 nights with some water, basic shelter, and their own company, and semi-wild nature here in northeast Scotland, knowing that there is a larger circle of men around them while they do that. Men who've also undergone that experience and found their own meaning through it. And that will be a generative initiation of boys in a community of understanding, powerful. I don't mean forceful. I don't mean strong. I mean powerful. Men who can center themselves, who can hold space, who can make decisions, who can challenge, who can hold accountability for themselves and others. I can't guarantee the seagull will be back when we're back. Hopefully you can hear it with the noise cancelling on my microphone, but there is a really noisy seagull on the roof. So that's the intention. So if you want more information about Fire in the King's Cup, which is the entry point for the Helios Fellowship, check out my website, pauljhowell.com. The Helios Fellowship website is about to be published. That is simply heliosfellowship.com. Email me at connect@pauljhowell.com. connect@pauljhowell.com. The program is non-residential, although we are here on the same site, so it's kind of semi-residential, I guess. There's a really cool caravan park just down the road. There's a great hostel. There's loads of Airbnbs here. There's camping, camper vans, all that kind of stuff is available to you. The day itself will be a morning session, 2-hour lunch break, 3-hour afternoon session, 2.5 hours in the evening, and then an evening session. So there'll be full sessions, but it will be spacious. But the focus, if you are bringing your family, as some men will, the focus will be on this throughout the day and into the evening. It will be full. That's why there's going to be a lot of space during the day for digestion, for informal connection, for relaxation. It's going to be the opposite of intense. Intensity never allows us to develop intimacy. Only when we've got enough ground and sense of connection and attunement and resonance in a community is it even meaningful to consider introducing intensity. So it's going to be a slow, steady burn, but it's going to be deep. And I mean working sincerely at depth in a way that is, I won't say safe because I can't guarantee that, but they'll be very mindful and very conscious. We'll be working with embodiment. Adam Griffin is coming up from Devon. Deep dive dance. He's been doing that work for over 20 years. As I say, Jamie's going to be here. Jamie's been teaching drumming, running community events at the Sussex Drum for 30 years. TJ's been an artist since he was about 2. TJ will be in the room creating the artwork for Fire in the King's Cup. I was kind of like, let's make some artwork. And then I thought, well, maybe the best place to make the artwork for Fire in the King's Cup would be in the King's Cup while it's actually burning. So he'll be in the room here somewhere doing his thing throughout the week. I think that's it for now. I'm looking forward to it, to taking, I remember when we finished the week here and Robert Moore had been waxing lyrical all week from his Jungian perspective. There was a chalice on the floor here and a wooden sword, one of those kind of theatre swords. And in that week, I never imagined that it would be me here who would be picking that up 20 years later and inviting another cohort of men to come back onto this landscape where I've lived since 2015-ish, for most of the time, and taking that work forward under the auspices of the Helios Fellowship, coming out of a band of brothers and Journeyman and the Mankind Project, and my 30 years of experience as working as a therapist and a coach and a facilitator and a guide in all kinds of arenas with all kinds of people, not specifically men's work. And so I look forward to welcoming you into this room, into this space, and sharing some quality time with you and undergoing that journey together. See you then.